ahead of us starting that this presentation will be recorded, and in a moment or so it will be streamed up on our website as well. Put that on right now. And then that's and then it would come on. My understanding of the scored. If anyone wants to know. So we'll give it a start since England has started. Hi there, everyone. Communications. This tonight is a consultation session in relation to the proposals at the corner of Cavendish Road and Brighton Road in Sutton. Hopefully you would have heard about today's session and tomorrow's session via receiving a leaflet through the door, or otherwise some of our posts on social media and to some of the other community groups as well. Joined by Kevin Goodwin, who's the planning consultant, Andrew Silconis from RAA, and Thomas from Formation Architects as well. Do you guys want to say hello at all?
Good evening, guys. As Raj said, I'm Kevin Goodwin, planning consultant. I will be the agent for any forthcoming planning application on the site.
Hi, Marco Tomasi from Formation Architects. I'm one of the architects for the scheme.
Address, you're on mute.
Sorry. Andrew Sagunas, RA applicant.
And so just a little bit about tonight's format. This evening is one of two sessions that we're doing with residents. So the second one is tomorrow. Really is kind of an opportunity to present the plans to residents as part of that consultation. We will be undertaking another set of activities ahead of submission as well. So, and there will be further details that will be placed up on the website, the Cavendish Road Sutton.com website. Hopefully you have also received once you clicked on that Zoom link as an attendee, that there is a survey that popped up, a Q&A that popped up here on Zoom, but also after you leave this evening's session, there is a survey. We really appreciate you to take part. So, Andreas, would you like to introduce briefly RAA?
Oh yes. We are small medium-time developer. Used to be in new build construction and refurbishment. Now starting doing planning deals and working together with housing associations. So that's where we are now, and looking to bring another housing association in this area, Sutton, for so needed homes.
I think we've lost Raj. So I will take over and introduce the scheme. Let me share my screen briefly. So I hope everyone can see it. It should now be on presentation mode. So I will briefly introduce our proposals, and there will be a Q&A session at the end. So you will have an opportunity to ask questions. Please do so, and we will answer after this brief introduction to the scheme. So first of all, there's a page about us, Formation Architects. We are an architectural firm based in Kennington in southwest London, and we do mainly residential schemes around London, mainly. There are a few of our projects here on this page. We really look at a range of sizes and typologies, ranging from single dwellings all the way to larger schemes and larger developments of a few hundred units. Moving on to the site we're looking at tonight, we have a site location plan on screen now. As you can see, the site is edged in red here on this page. It sits at the junction of Brighton Road and Cavendish Road. It's about 0.15 hectares in size, and it's currently occupied by 3 houses of 2 stories with a pitch roof. And they sit at an angle like this. You can see around the corner of the site. There are some trees at the front bordering Brighton Road, and the main access is from Cavendish Road. We are not in a conservation area, and we don't have any listed buildings on the site. Oh, Raj is back. Raj, I just started the presentations, but dropped off briefly. So what we just literally just started. So we have a few site photographs of the current condition of the site. You can see here the arrows where the pictures are taken from, and these are the buildings currently on site. So the 3 houses, as I said earlier, 2 stories with quite a tall pitch roof with quite a tall ridge. So we would classify these as 2.5-story buildings, so to speak. So we also have a page about Sutton, about the policy in terms of planning in Sutton, in terms of local plans and expectations for development in the area. We are immediately south of the town centre in an area of potential intensification. This means that this is one of the areas in the council where we are expected to deliver some of the housing that Sutton is expected to approve and deliver in the next few years. And this is due to proximity to local amenities and also accessibility in terms of public transport. This is a slide showing the transport links. So our site, which you can see here, again, edged in red, has a public transport accessibility level of 5, which is really high. It's near the top of the range, which goes from 1 to 6. This means that it has a high accessibility in terms of public transport, and this is due mainly to the proximity to the Sutton railway station, which is within walking distance, and also because of the presence of numerous bus routes on the Brighton Road and immediately adjacent to the site. The fact that we have a high accessibility level means that the site is a good candidate for residential intensification. We have now a slide looking at the local context, the immediate context around the site in terms of massing. So it's quite a varied condition in terms of height and footprints of buildings. We have a mix of smaller buildings, like the 3 houses currently on the site, and some of the other homes on the opposite side of Brighton Road. Interspersed with taller buildings, and the taller buildings range between 4 to 6 to all the way to 11 and 12 stories immediately opposite us. These taller apartment blocks and office buildings also have a bigger footprint. So we have a range of footprints around the area, again ranging between the smaller ones all the way to a much larger blocks. And as one moves north towards the town centre, we get increasingly larger footprints and increasingly taller buildings. So we've set out some design objectives for the site. We've identified it as an ideal candidate for a residential development. We have a transition area between a more suburban character moving into the town centre towards a more urban typology of buildings. So there is the potential to increase the density of the site. We have a prominent corner site with access from Brighton Road and Cavendish Road, which means that we've got an opportunity to address both streets and create a corner building that deals with the townscape relationship with all the neighbouring buildings around it. We have also an opportunity to improve the public realm along Brighton Road and Cavendish Road and reinstate a stronger street front on this very prominent access into the town centre. So we are currently drawing up the plans for a scheme that delivers 36 new homes with the mix that you can see on screen now. So there are 10 one-bed flats, 21 two-bed flats, and 5 three-bed flats. All the residential units are designed to meet the space standards dictated by the London Plan. 10% of the units will be wheelchair accessible. There are 4 car parking spaces associated with the wheelchair units in the scheme. And there's also a communal landscaped area in the form of roof terraces on the upper floors and a ground floor level at the rear of the block. There are also some ancillary spaces, in particular cycle stores and refuse store to serve the residential units. So we have now a set of plans that show the layout of the new proposal. So you can see that the building is laid out to follow the orientation of Brighton Road and to follow the line of the street. So we've set the building back from the pavement to respect the kind of the green character of this particular corner of Cavendish Road and Brighton Road, where we have some existing trees. So that area of greenery will be taken down all the way across the site. So we've deliberately set the building quite a lot back from the front here. And then we have also aligned the frontage to the houses immediately to the south. So you can see that the building, the line here is aligned with the Melton Court development to the south and also to the Lavender Court development to the east. The main access to the building, the residential entrance, will be from Brighton Road at this point, more or less in the center of the site, with a double height lobby, which gives it some prominence and presence on the street, and a really clear wayfinding in terms of main access. The ancillary areas, the car parking and the refuse, are off Cavendish Road in this part of the site. You can see the 4 car parking spaces here from Cavendish Road and the refuse store here, which will be collected from the curbside or around the corner. The areas to the south is all occupied by a landscaped area here towards the neighbors to the east and to the south. So these are some floor plans of the upper floors where one can see the layout of the block, which again follows the footprint of the ground floor with the core towards the rear of the site. You can see it here, and the corridor serving 2 banks of flats towards the east and towards the west. So what we've tried to do was to maximize the opportunity for corner units. So all flats have a corner position within the block so that they can have windows on 2 different directions, therefore benefiting from a dual aspect condition and better access to daylight and sunlight. There's also a balcony associated with each unit, and you can see them here on both the second floor plan and the first floor plan. As one moves up the building starts to step and towards the south We have a lower portion at 4 stories, and then the building steps up towards the north. So we have 6 stories at the junction between Cavendish Road and Brighton Road, and 4 stories here towards the south. And you can see it in these 2 plans, the one at the top being the very top floor, where the footprint is a lot smaller. We only have 4 flats around the core. And the roof terraces here on 2 different levels towards the south. The last plan here at the bottom of the image is the lower ground floor, the basement, where we have ancillary spaces in the form of a plant room and the cycle store for all the bicycles. We are looking at the elevations for the buildings. We're still in the early stages of the development for the design of the facades, but we are looking at an architectural language that links with the surroundings, which is contextual. It will be a contemporary approach in terms of architectural language, but using traditional materials such as red brick. We are anticipating that we'll have different shades of brick, probably a lighter red and a darker red. We'll have dark grey metalwork for balustrading and window frames. So the images you can see on this slide are meant to give a flavour for what the buildings could look like. In terms of proportions of windows, typologies of materials, and also articulations of the facades. But this is still indicative at this point, and we very much welcome comments on this, because we haven't quite finalized the design yet, and that's why we are consulting at this point, which is quite early on in the design process. So to conclude, we have a few visualizations of the massing of the scheme as seen in context. So we have dropped the 3D model of the scheme onto quite a wide context of the area. So this is a view from Brighton Road looking north. So all those blue tall buildings there, you can see those are in the Sutton town centre. The blue ones have not been built yet, but have received planning consent, so we put them for reference. Whereas the grey one have been built already. I think that's the Sutton Cross scheme just opposite the police station. So you can see here that our scheme is in yellow, and it's very much lying within the roof lines of the buildings around it. So in terms of height, the 6 stories really relates to the buildings around it, and then stepping down to 4 stories towards the south allows us to mediate between the relatively lower height of the residential units to the south and the taller blocks all around the scheme as one goes further towards the town centre. This is quite clear as well on this image. This is still on Brighton Road looking north. You can see our scheme here on the right. So you can see the 4-story height here with the roof terrace, then stepping up to 6 there at the corner. And you can see the 12-story residential block on the opposite side of Brighton Road. This is the opposite view. So from Brighton Road looking south, with the building opposite Cavendish Road here on the left, and our 6-story building on the corner. Again, we had decided to go for 6 stories, which is quite an established medium range height in the area. There's quite a lot of buildings around that height. So we deliberately didn't try to get up to, you know, the 10, 11 stories that you can find in the locality, and chose halfway kind of height between those taller blocks and the lower houses immediately to the south of the site. And you can see how this translates into a massing that blends in and fits in with the immediate surroundings. This is a view on Cavendish Road looking west towards the junction with Brighton Road, with Lavender Court that's been modelled here, the care home, which is 3.5 stories, and our 4-story shoulder onto Lavender Court. So we have an alignment on the facade and also in the height, and then the slight step up to 6 stories, marking that prominent corner between Brighton Road and Cavendish Road. And again, the taller blocks immediately to the north and on the other side of Brighton Road. There's a couple of images to finish. This is from Grange Vale, looking east towards Brighton Road, which again is down there where that car is. That's basically at the junction with our 6 stories. Something that is not quite drawn on these images is the trees at the front. So there will be quite a lot of trees in front of the buildings. Some will be retained, some will be new trees. And these are some aerial views. So you can see our building again in yellow. You can see the step a little bit better on this image. So you've got the 4-story here with the roof terrace. Then you've got a 5-story step and the 6-story at the top, only at the junction, which again relates to the buildings to the north, which are 6 stories, and on the opposite side of the street. And I think this is the last image, where we've got another bird's eye view, which looks at the opposite side. So this is looking down towards the south. So obviously we've got Brighton Road here on the bottom right, the junction with Cavendish Road and our 6-story building with the step down to 4, and Lavender Court here on the left. And I think that's the last image. So I'll pass back to Raj. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. So I was going to, so there are some questions that have already come prior to the session, and there are some questions that are already coming through the Q&A function there. I apologise about earlier, about dropping off right at the beginning. I guess it's because maybe when England happened to have scored their first goal. But so one of the questions that has come through is, has the proposal already gone through to Sutton Council yet? The answer to that is no, it hasn't. There have been some pre-application discussions with opposite Sutton Council, and we briefed in the last week to Sutton ward councillors, but we aren't looking to submit until later this summer. And in terms of what the timeline for that is, there's often talk about it being heard within 12 weeks, but likely to be a lot longer on that. In regards to, there's an additional question which asks about the timing of when one would be looking to construct the building. Kevin and Andreas, do you have could you perhaps help with that question there?
I guess in terms of, as you said, we've got to make the planning application. We're probably 4 weeks or so away. Then the statutory period is 13 weeks, so let's say 3.5 months. But in reality, it will probably be a bit longer than that, because most local authorities are a bit stretched from resources at the moment. And then even if we get permission for the principle of the building as you see it along those lines, there are a number of what are called pre-commencement conditions which will need to be discharged. So getting the main permission in the first place is, yes, is a big gain, but we then have to discharge these pre-commencement conditions. So I can't think that will be a start on site until probably after Easter 2022.
Thanks, Kevin. And one question that was also asked, it came along before the session, was would be willing to visit and residents and speak with them. Yes, this is really the first start of kind of the consultation process from our end. Obviously conscious of the current guidelines and things opening up from July 19th. But for instance, if you're interested in a further briefing or how this potentially impacts where you live at the moment, I know residents of Lavender Court have been in touch as well, and we're looking to arrange that, but we'd be more than happy to. One question here is in regards to materials, and one of the questions here is, will there be any cladding used? Marco, do you want to? So I'll just quickly go.
Yes, we are not anticipating. There's a lot of feedback. Anyway, we're not anticipating the use of any materials other than brick cladding for the external walls at this point. We think that that's a more durable material. We think it's more in keeping with the local character, and we also think it provides a better, more durable finish for the building. So the answer in short is no, there won't be any cladding such as metal or other materials on the building. It will be mainly brick finish.
And one of the questions from the same person is regards to green spaces, and there have been a couple of questions about this, about trees, but we'll address that shortly. So in regards to green spaces, I understand that there are going to be communal spaces alongside the development itself, and further plans being developed in regards to the landscaping of the development itself. I'm just going to go to the right plan. Am I right in saying, Marco, it's onto the 4th floor that there's going to be a terrace as well?
Yes, absolutely. So the plan at the bottom shows the communal terrace, which is that white area at the bottom of the image. So that will be a communal landscaped terrace. There's also a fair amount of communal landscaping at ground floor, which you can see in the plan on screen right now. So there's quite a generous buffer of green space towards the eastern boundary with Lavender Court. That's all landscaping, communal space accessible for residents. We also have a green wedge at the front of the building, separating the facade from Brighton Road. On top of that, each unit has a private amenity space in the form of either a balcony or a ground floor terraced area.
I was just going to add also that there's that triangle of land which is outside our red line at the junction of the 2 roads. Of course, the green area at the moment where the seat is there, so that is remains untouched. I think it's owned by Sutton Highways, so that remains green as a setting for the site as well. So we benefit from that in that respect.
So question mark follows a question. A question about the number of trees that are to be cut down. So I understand that's still being looked at the moment in regards to the precise number, but if I go to the ground floor plan there are a few trees, but particularly on the side of Brighton Road and Cavendish Road that we will be looking to replace, but there will be no net loss of trees. There'll be a replacement of those trees with mature trees. I think that's right. Is that fair to say?
Yes, we're working really hard with our arboriculturalists at the moment to try and preserve as many trees as possible. We are prioritizing the better quality trees. So we've surveyed all trees on site, and some are better quality than others. So we're looking at trying and retain all the better ones as much as possible. And as you said, Raj, we will replace all the trees that we lose, so there won't be any net loss of trees as a result of the development.
And moving on in terms of the actual, what is the actual height of the highest element of the building going to be? That's one question that's coming.
So that's 6 stories. So the area at the junction of Brighton Road and Cavendish Road, so will be 6 stories in height. So that's at that point there, yes, which is roughly equivalent to the building on the opposite side of Cavendish Road. Whereas on the opposite side of Brighton Road, we have a 12-story tower block, which is twice the height, obviously. So in terms of meters, it's roughly 18 to 19 meters in height. That's your 6 stories.
So the 12-story building you're referring to was this one here? Yeah. Opposite the road, yeah. And the starting point for the development will be lower than the base of where the houses are at the moment.
Correct. Yes, we are looking at the levels of the site. There's currently a gentle slope leading onto the access to the houses, So we're working with our landscaping to try and level that as much as possible, so that the building will sit slightly lower at, the ground floor level will be slightly lower than the existing ground floor level.
And in terms of, so the existing site itself, so there are 3 houses that are located on the site itself. One of the questions, apologies there, one of the questions there was about the ownership. So I understand one of those houses is vacant at the moment. Is that right, Kevin? And Andreas, would you like to comment on that at all in regards to the current ownership of the land?
Andreas, place to.
We have option agreement with vendors for the next 24 months, and to purchase the property while planning will be successful.
So they're all in private ownership at the moment.
Yes.
There's an option that if we gain our planning permission later this year, then that option will be taken up and the property will be in the ownership of the developer.
And moving on, so one of the questions that has come up is the impact of overshadowing and privacy. So I imagine that's probably in relation to, I'm going to safely move through these slides again, to particularly, one of the buildings that's closest to it is Lavender Court. So if for instance, if I was a resident at Lavender Court, actually that plan is helpful there. But is there going to be any impact in terms of my daylight and sunlight?
If you perhaps go back one slide, right?
Sorry, Kevin.
Go back one slide to the ground. Whoever's in control of the thing, go back one slide to the ground floor. Although it's equally exposed here. So we are to the north of Melton Court, for instance. So the sun is obviously to the south, so there's no impact in terms of sunlight on Melton Court. We're to the southwest, west of Lavender Court. So there's potential that Lavender Court in its rear wing certainly receives sunlight in the afternoon. We are set back far enough from Lavender Court, the separation distance, because our building steps as the Brighton Road is at an angle, as said earlier. We will be putting a daylight and sunlight report in with the application, which will look at all the adjoining properties, primarily Lavender Court and the 1 to 8 Melton Court to the south. So to the south principally for daylight rather than sunlight, and to the east for Lavender Court in terms of daylight and sunlight. But we anticipate the separation distance between the two to be more than sufficient, that there will be no significant diminution in light to those properties, if any diminution at all.
So, Kevin, if you were a resident or a resident who lives at Lavender Court, that daylight and sunlight study obviously will go along with the planning application as well. We'll be able to kind of go through that with residents as soon as the daylight sunlight support has been submitted alongside the application. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it will all of the Lavender where we come to the boundary, we are no deeper than that front wing, head of the T, should we call it, of Lavender Court, as you're looking at it on this image at the moment, and where we then go behind Lavender Court, as Lavender Court itself steps back from the boundary, we step back from the boundary as well. So we're closer than their rear wing, but we're not that close. And the separation improves the further south you go. So we don't necessarily anticipate any significant impact upon daylight or sunlight to Lavender Court. That report, that technical report, together with a number of other technical reports, will go in with the planning application, will be in the public domain, and residents will be able to read that, and we can discuss it with them.
And one question that has come up quite often is in regards to the impact on the roads themselves and the traffic generation as a result. So I'm going to quickly move, if I can, to the relevant slide, which I think is I think I've actually already gone past it, but is the is in regards to transport links. So the site itself is designated in an area which is of a PTAL rating of 5. So that's a rating that is based on how accessible that site is to public transport. And Kevin, is it right to say that the officers at Sutton Council, but also the Transport for London and Greater London and the GLA are keen on greater car-free developments in areas where there is high public accessibility to public transport. But in terms of the impact on traffic generation, a transport study will be done, and that will also be submitted alongside the planning application itself.
Yes, so there was policy in London boroughs. You have the Sutton local plan, which is the one produced by the borough itself, and then you have at a more strategic level covering the 33 London boroughs, the London plan that was most recently adopted in March this year, and has the precedence as the more recently adopted document. But the general consensus in London, wherever you may be in, whichever London borough you might be in, is that the more accessible the site is, the lower amount of car parking. And essentially, the London plan says if you're in a PTAL of 3, 4, and above, then you shouldn't be providing any car parking on site other than for disabled blue badge holders. Here you can see the 2 red dots. You've got the northbound and the southbound bus stops just outside the site on Brighton Road. You've got a short walk slightly downhill, I think it is, to Sutton Station on the way to the station, slightly uphill coming back home in the evening if you're commuting. Obviously, you've got the access to the town centre. It's eateries around that junction just north of the station. You've got Morrison supermarket there as well. You've got Asda down the far end of town, further to walk though. So it's classified as a very accessible location where you would expect there to be no car parking on site. It is a car parking zone, which operates Monday to Saturday. And we would expect that any residents would not be eligible for a car parking permit, as well as having no car parking on site. So they wouldn't be able to get a permit and park certainly on the south side of Cavendish Road. I think the north side of Cavendish Road is being permits and it's pay and display. It's a relatively limited pay and display window. So within the parking zone that it covers Cavendish Road, residents wouldn't be able to eligible for a car parking permit to park in those areas. So again, adding to the layering of trying to encourage people to not have a car in a location such as this.
So associated with the issue of transport is, how is the building going to be serviced? So I understand that there are vehicular entrances for the site from what we were trying to achieve both at Cavendish Road and Brighton Road, but in terms of where refuse will be kind of serviced, it's where my pointer is right there on the ground floor of Cavendish Road.
Coming in, yes. Brighton Road is a PFL route. It's not actually a PFL road as opposed to a borough road. So, I mean, clearly there are properties that face onto Brighton Road that have to be serviced from Brighton Road, but at the moment, the majority of servicing takes place in Cavendish Road to the properties up and down Cavendish Road. And so we've got the refuse store towards the north of the building, so the refuse vehicle can stop on Cavendish Road, clear of the main bus route road, and pick up refuse, as it does with the other properties in Cavendish Road.
And one question that has been asked, and quite a few times, with leaflets that have come through the door, and from those that are on the session, is the provision of affordable housing. So I understand that we are looking to submit an application that will provide 35% affordable housing. Is that right, Kevin?
Yes, that's the estimation, 35% affordable housing. And I noticed one of the questions in the Q&A asked about the tenure of the affordable housing. then we will be required to have a mixed tenure in affordable housing between both shared ownership and social rented housing, or London rented housing, depending on the terminology that's being used today. So it would be a mixture of market, i.e. for sale properties, shared ownership properties, and social rent properties, so a full tenure spread. And we're working with what's called a registered provider or housing association from the outset, and they're likely to be involved heavily with the application submission as well to support the provision of the affordable dwellings within the building.
Brilliant. And one question that's come previously about well, what happens during construction? So the issue of fumes and the issue of kind of external cleaning of lavender court and surrounding properties, including vehicles, during the completion, during and after completion of the work. Well, I understand as long as a construction management plan would be submitted to London Borough of Sutton, and there will no doubt be an element that will require engagement with surrounding properties and how to mitigate the impact of works during construction. But that would be in terms of when a construction management plan would be submitted. Kevin, would that be at time of submission of the planning application, or would that be later on in the process?
Two options. One is that we put in a draft construction management plan, which gives an indication as to the sort of direction of travel, shall we say, of how we're intending to construct the building and in terms of working environment, etc. And it would normally then be conditioned that when you actually have a contractor on board who will obviously have a say to a degree themselves as to how they want to construct it, the final construction management plan would then be submitted, discharging a condition attached to a planning permission, in order that it reflected the contractor's sort of preference for how they want to build it. But that preference clearly has to take into account things like wheel washing, if you're producing, during demolition, if it's a dry, dusty weather, they might have to spray to damp down dust. So all those considerations, hours of working, the fact there will be a liaison name and address, or name and phone number, contact details. So if there's an issue out of hours, someone knows who to contact. So that all that will be covered in initially the draft construction management plan, and then finally the final version of the construction plan, which the council has to sign off.
A question about a question that's come in just a few moments ago. Are you going to appoint a party wall surveyor to deal with the party wall? I'm not so sure which wall it's actually referring to. Does anyone of the team have an idea of which wall that might be in reference to?
I think we're talking about the wall along the eastern boundary towards Lavender Court. So the answer is yes, where required, a party wall surveyor will be appointed in due course. At the moment, we only have one wall that's close to the boundary, all the others are quite away from it.
That would normally happen later down the line once we've got planning permission. At the moment, obviously, we're looking at submitting something along the lines of what we've shown on screen tonight. Until we have a planning permission, it would be premature normally to actually this the final scheme may not require a party wall surveyor. At the moment it does, but we should get permission for.
Here's a question that's just come up in terms of how a development affect the local schools in terms of places for the children of residents. Kevin, so as well as alongside the application itself, that there will be something called a community infrastructure levy, which is a contribution that the developer makes to that can be used by the London Borough of Sutton for local services such as GP surgeries and school services. But there's Kevin Amara saying that with planning applications, there's often something called a child yield, and how many kind of children they expect as part of the development itself.
In terms of working out, for instance, place-based requirements, the Greater London Authority, GLA, have a development calculator, an Excel spreadsheet, which you plumb in the number of units of particular sizes within the scheme. It shows up the likely population generation from the scheme. It will then throw up also the child permutation from the screen, from the scheme, within age bands of the under 5s, 5 to 15s and over, etc. So you can work out roughly from that what the likely childhood is going to be for place-based provision, and also where those children, what the number of children may need to be accommodated in schools. And as you rightly said earlier, you have this thing called community infrastructure levy, which is a ratio of square meters of development building times a pounds per square meter, and that generates a sum of money for each residential development, which the council collect, or the GLA collects some and the council collect the rest, and the amount the council collect they then use to provide those local services, which would include funding for school extensions, temporary classrooms, etc., as necessary where there are capacity issues that arise in Sutton.
Sorry, thanks, Kevin. I'm just going through some of the questions that have come through to see if there's anything else that we haven't looked to address. But whilst I'm looking through that and allowing for anyone else to ask any questions during this session. So there is another session that's going to be taking place tomorrow evening at the same time. There will be the videos will go up on the website and some consultation boards that will follow. There will be an interactive element on the website for anyone else who pops onto the website to ask further questions there, and for that to be responded to in real time as well. And for instance, if you are a resident who wishes to meet the team, I'm more than happy to come along and meet you down on site as well. One question perhaps. One question, I guess, earlier is like, what do you anticipate as the biggest nuisance to local area, and what have you done to mitigate this in your plans? Well, I imagine the biggest concern that has probably been raised so far has been relation to impact on traffic and onto the roads. And as you mentioned, there's a transport plan report that will be submitted as part of the planning application to monitor what the kind of impacts on the highways will be as a result of this development and additional homes in the area. I think we have answered all those questions. Give it a couple of more minutes for anyone else who wish to ask a question. As I mentioned, the link that once you leave this Zoom session, there will be a survey up online as well that you can answer, and answer our poll, some of the questions that we'd like to get your views on. I guess particularly we'll be quite keen on views on the materials that we're proposing and the design of the building itself. Also feel free to get in contact on our free phone telephone number as well, which is 0800 433 2622. Our email details are also on the consultation website as well. And if you haven't already submitted a feedback form, they are free posts, so you can just literally slip them through into your postbox and they should come through. Just going to see if there's any last questions. That's sorry, Kevin.
I was just going to say feedback from this as well is that as one of the documents that will go in with the planning application is what's called an SCI, statement of community involvement. So we have to demonstrate to the council in this SCI document that we have undertaken this consultation and how we've responded to any points that have been raised. So that document also goes into the planning application.
Thanks, Kevin, yeah, that'll be our report will be written by us, demonstrating how we've consulted with residents and responded to issues that have been raised. That will be submitted alongside the application, and we're happy to share those copies with residents as well once that's been submitted. But I will leave you all to have a wonderful evening. I think we'll come to a close now. If you don't already know, England won 2-0 against Germany. But as I said, if you pop by to the survey after this session, we'll really appreciate your feedback and comments. I'd like to thank Marco and Kevin and Andreas, particularly stepping in when I had technical issues earlier. Thanks ever so much, everyone. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Everyone, whoever else is still online. We just haven't ended the meeting just because we were running this consultation until 7:30, so that's another 6 minutes to go. So we're still available for you, should you wish to ask any further questions. Oh, I do apologise. Sorry, I've just seen 2 questions that have come up just now. So from that have been asked, apologies for this. So how many car parking spaces are proposed on the new site? So there are 4 car parking spaces that are proposed on the site itself. So they are to be on the ground floor undercroft car parking, and they are for blue badge holders. 10% of all homes in most developments are required for disabled car parking and accessible homes. So that's what we are providing for car parking spaces as part of the development, and that's because Council, London Borough of Sutton, alongside other councils in London, are keen to promote car-free developments in areas where there is good accessibility to public transport. The site itself is listed under PTL 5, which is the measure that the GLA uses to measure how accessible the site is, and 5 is considered to be particularly high. The highest is I think 6A, so it's considered to be very, very high. In regards to the question about one on the proposed site, one house has been sold. Have you bought it? so I can get back to you in regards to after this session. So as Andrew has mentioned, that there are agreements in place with those homes that are in private ownership about a prospective development on that site. So we are. So I think I can see who that is, and I'm happy to add that onto kind of the FAQs onto the website, and make sure that's responded to as well. Add that to the list. So see, we have a couple of people here. So we're just coming to the final minute. I'm sure you're sick and tired of seeing my face right now and want to enjoy your evening and potentially watching the football afterwards. I think there's a second game as well. But just to remind you that we welcome all feedback and comments during this session. This session will be uploaded onto the website. The comments themselves will be used to kind of inform the way in which future direction of the development itself, and also incorporated as part of our statement of community involvement, which is how we demonstrate we've consulted and engaged with residents. So those residents who have passed about meeting. So I've just asked. So sorry. Just answer this last point. We're happy to meet with you on site ahead of submission, particularly after the June 19th opening date. And also throughout that process, if there are other residents who know of you weren't able to attend this evening or tomorrow evening, we're more than happy to meet with them. There's a question that's just come up now, how the development affect the local schools in terms of spaces. I think I was answered a little bit earlier by Kevin, that there will be a contribution as part of the development name of Community Infrastructure Levy, which is a contribution to London Borough of Sutton, that almost was a contribution to schools and GP health surgeries and local infrastructure, and I think we're still waiting to find out how many number of places there may be a demand for as a result of this development, but the development itself makes a contribution towards that. I'm going to call an end to this meeting. Have a wonderful evening, everyone. Thanks. Bye-bye.